Big houses can be deceiving and even confusing. When you see a mansion, you assume that everything inside the house is pristine, peaceful, and in order. But way too often, it's just like my childhood, nothing more than a facade. You see, my mom married this wealthy man, so I would not have to struggle like she did when she was a child. And even though her intentions were good, it turned out to be a disaster. He lorded over us. He wasn't a stepfather or a husband, but a king. And everyone in that house was there to serve him. When I was 13 years old, I wanted to play football, but he wanted me to learn the piano, mainly because his country club buddies had children who played. I remember sitting at the dinner table, him telling my mom, "I will not have a savage in my house. It's bad enough I'm raising and paying for your bastard ass son, but under no circumstances will he be uncivilized. And only a damn fool will slam his head into another man, playing that barbaric game, destroying his body, damaging his brains. And for what? He's too small to go pro. What is he gonna do? He's nothing more than a little fucking shrimp." Now, as usual, he always got what he wanted, and so I started taking piano lessons. After 6 months, he wanted a piano in the house, just like all of his country club friends. So he buys a vintage piano from one of those estate auctions, which, by the way, he forced me and my mother to attend with him. 2 days later, the piano is delivered, and I'm forced to play it daily. And I'll tell you something, and listen to me when I tell you, the day that piano came into our house, everything changed. Now, even though my stepfather was a pure grade A 100% asshole, he went from being his normal asshole self to being downright evil. And at night, I start to hear the piano, just a few keys, playing on their own. You see, he put me in the downstairs bedroom, away from all the others. And that piano was just 30 feet outside of my door. And at night, when I was falling asleep, you could gently hear the piano keys playing by themselves. And listen, I wasn't dreaming, I wasn't imagining things. You could hear those piano keys playing. Now, the following day, I tell my mother, and she believes me. She agrees that something strange is now going on in the house. She says that when she's at home alone, she hears the same thing while she's in the kitchen. About a week passes and we're all at the dinner table and we hear that piano. My stepdad tries to ignore it, but the more he does, the more it actually plays. And as that music is playing, something begins to happen to him. His eyes begin to open wider and wider. His brow tenses up. This evil look comes over his face. And the next thing you know, it erupts into the symphony of violence. Music playing as he literally tears the place up, knocking food off the table, throwing chairs, ripping paintings off the wall. I tell you, he looked like a wild man. My mother and I are huddled in a corner, trying to stay out of his way as he's going start raving mad, screaming, standing on the table. And then he turns his attention to her, throwing me out of the way and slapping her in the face. He was in the process of mounting his body on the top of her so he could beat her when I grabbed one of the flower vases and cracked him across the back of his head, his body falling limp to the floor. Mother and I run out of the dining room into my bedroom, barricade ourselves in a room for the rest of the night. There was no use in calling the police. He owned the police. And she and I fell asleep with our backs pressed up against the dresser, blocking the bedroom door. Let me tell you, that was the most terrifying night of my life. The next morning, when we awoke, he was still laying there on the floor in a pool of blood. And I thought I had killed him. Part of me wanted him dead. But the son of a bitch was too evil to die. And when he was admitted to the hospital, they did brain scans and turns out that he had swelling on his brain. Over the next few weeks, my mother went back and forth paying him visits, but I refused to. I absolutely refused to lay eyes on this man. And somewhere along the road to his recovery, he apologized to her and told her he didn't know what came over him. He had just gotten so angry. And as much as I hate him, If we're being honest here, yes, he was a verbally abusive asshole, but he never ever had been physically abusive before. In the hospital, he promised my mother that it would never happen again. And when he finally came back home, he did seem different. It was almost like getting knocked across the head actually knocked some sense into him. Things went well for the next 45 days, but then we started to find him in the middle of the night, sitting at the piano, touching it, massaging it, being sensual and erotic, treating it like it was a woman itself. Sick, nasty behavior. And it was that night that my mom decided we were going to get rid of that freaking piano. Look, 2 days later, he flies to Dallas for a meeting. My mom has that piano dragged out of the house to the backyard, and we burn it. And everybody knows what fire looks like. It's yellow and red, but no, it's supposed to be yellow and red. But this fire burned blue, this bright blue flame. Never seen anything like that before in my life. Now, when he returned and discovered that the piano was gone, he was on an emotional roller coaster. You would have thought that his mother had died. This man actually cried himself to sleep. To make it even more strange, the following morning, he went back to being his normal self, that verbally abusive asshole. My mom stayed with him until I was 18 years old. Then we left. Now, those were some of the toughest years of my life. Yes, I had access to money, influence. All that stuff was good. But the abuse that came along with it nearly drove me to suicide.